The Connect Show is made possible in part by the Human Resource Group. HRG provides top-level human resource services to a broad range of companies and organizations. And by Stellcom Technologies. Stellcom creates innovative solutions to technology and engineering challenges. Services include systems integration, supplemental staffing, and technology products.
Connect is the program in technology and entrepreneurship at the University of California, San Diego. Connect links high-tech entrepreneurs with the financial, managerial, and technical resources they need for success. Investors, scientists, lawyers, accountants, government officials, and other service providers all come together with Connect to create high-tech companies in California. And now, Barbara Bree.
Good evening. Welcome to the Connect Show. I'm Barbara Bree. Tonight we'll focus on open book management. This is sharing financial information with employees at all levels of your organization. Open the books to the staff. Aren't you just asking for trouble? Open book management is a radical change from traditional management policy. But when it's done right, you may find your company more productive when the workers know what the numbers mean and why they matter. And now to the panel. Mark Fackler is the president of Stellcom Technologies, a privately held computer software development firm based in San Diego. Stan Seawich is the president of the Human Resource Group. HRG specializes in providing top-level human resource services to a broad range of companies and organizations. Stan is also a founder of the biotech company Chromogen. Dan Chavez is a vice president at Stellcom Technologies, and Paul Villamoria is an associate with the Human Resource Group. Welcome, all of you. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Mark, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about Stellcom.
Well, I'd be happy to. Stellcom Technologies is a 13-year-old company. We have about 200 employees, and we specialize in providing software engineering services, hardware design services, project management, technical writing for the high-tech companies here in San Diego, and also any company who has a need for a high-tech solution to run their business. We've specialized in the telecommunications areas, the embedded systems areas, MIS, have a broad range of capabilities, and have been growing steadily for about 13 straight years now.
And you started the company yourself?
I founded the company in 1984 as a software engineer, hung up my shingle and went to work, and the following year hired my girlfriend, who's now my wife, to be the first engineer, hired some friends afterwards, and continued growing the company.
Stan, tell us a little bit about HRG and its origins.
Well, it was started in March of '89. I had been working for Mycogen Corporation as a director of human resources, quality assurance, and facilities, and had put together a business plan for this idea and decided I wasn't getting any younger, and if it didn't work, then my kids were young enough that if I had to uproot them from school, that would be fine. So 8 years later, we have 14 employees, and we do work with, as you said, a wide variety of companies. Our charter in life is to be an HR department for hire. And we work primarily on a project basis for companies who either don't have an HR department or do, and they need additional help beyond what they have inside.
Well, tonight we're going to talk about open book management, and while you can have open book management without employee ownership, generally the two go together, and both Stellcom and HRG are employee owned at this point. Mark, what motivated you to move toward employee ownership at Stellcom?
Employee ownership was always a philosophy that I felt was the right thing to do, but there was a lot of psychological barriers to get there. Having built the company up and sort of created this child, it's very difficult to start giving pieces of it to other people and let them be responsible for what's happening. So with a lot of help from the Foundation of Enterprise Development, the FED, a lot of education, I was able to sort of break that barrier and give the ownership and bring the folks into the fold and have them all sort of be in the boat together.
Dan, what role did you play in moving Stellcom along toward employee ownership?
A little bit of energy. I have previous experience at SAIC, and it was a very positive experience and believed in the concept.
And SAIC is an employee-owned company?
Yes, it is. I believe it's one of the largest employee-owned companies. It's the largest technology-based employee-owned companies. And it was part of the conversation when Mark recruited me away from SAIC, the whole concept of employee ownership and moving Stellcom in that direction. So I was part of the evolutionary process and the decision process, and I think part of the education process with Mark. He termed it a psychological process. It was very emotional for Mark. And I think we had a lot of long, good conversations regarding employee ownership and what it meant, especially to him as an owner.
In fact, during the sale process of Dan, the commitments that I was making to him sort of made me feel as though I've got to continue down that path. And so it was a real motivator to have Dan on board and have made those types of promises and say, well, we've just got to go ahead and do it.
Would you have joined Stellcom, Dan, if it hadn't been moving toward employee ownership?
I would have been much more reluctant to join. I think it's a very important concept, especially in a small emerging firm that has a lot of ambition and wants to grow quickly, especially a services firm. So it would have been an inhibitor to joining.
Stan, has HRG always been employee-owned? What's your history?
Not always. We started the stock ownership plan in 1993, and up until that point it probably wouldn't have been much to own anyway. But after that point, I realized that you don't get it all until you give it away. And it's a phrase I might borrow from the teaching profession, that when you engage more and more people in the act of ownership, it's a paradox. You don't actually lose anything. You multiply what you might be able to own yourself as an initial founder and an entrepreneur. And that's, I think, been our philosophy all the way through.
Paul, was employee ownership an attraction to joining HRG?
Very much so. I really wanted to move into a company where I felt I could really make a contribution and have the opportunity to have responsibility. And the two things about HRG that I really liked was it was a small, rapidly growing company, and it had employee ownership. So those are the things that attracted me.
Okay, so let's say Stellcom is a company that a few years ago it's 100% owned by Mark and Kathy Fackler. Mm-hmm. What's the first step that you take to move toward employee ownership?
Oh, for me it was a year of education. Going to seminars, talking to people who have done it, trying to find out what the value is, why would you want to give something away, why would the pie get bigger if you give it away, and once you get over that, it's a little bit easier to do. And then of course there's the legal and the accounting issues that have to be taken care of. It's a complex, fascinating process.
It's a very iterative process. I think it started with Mark. We had to come to grips with what it meant from a definition point of view. And then the management team had to get involved and get buy-in. And then we had to prepare a rollout plan for the rest of the employees. So it's a 3 or 4 step process with lots of feedback and iteration in between.
And as you mentioned, an educational process, it never really ends.
Right.
We find ourselves, even though we advise companies on the process of doing these types of compensation plans, we're continually re-educating ourselves on what it means for us. And we have some employees who are newly joined. They're not really familiar with the process or what it means or how it differs from a non-employee-owned company because they haven't worked anywhere else, perhaps. And that's a constant, I wouldn't call it a chore, it's a constant pleasure to be able to go through that education process. And it's changing as time goes on.
Mark, how did you determine how much of the company to give away initially? Could you tell us specifically, you know, how it's working, what percentage of the company is going to the employees over what period of time?
That was a very difficult, and it's very subjective. You can do a lot of research and look what other companies are doing, but it's still a very subjective, very personal thing to do. What we've decided to do is have a 5-year plan where we want to give away 4% of the company each year. That way we keep on attracting new people, and there's a carrot. There's a reason to stay, to get more ownership, and so we hope that it works. It's hard to say. It's a brand new program. It's only been in place for about 9 months now, so we have given away 4% of the company, and we're in the process of giving away another 4%.
How did you value the company?
We hired Coopers & Lybrand is our accounting firm, and they suggested that we go to another party